Go Loud presents Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. Brought to you by Revive Active, Ireland's #1 vitamin and dietary supplement brand. Find out more at reviveactive.com or your local pharmacy and health food stores.
Ireland Crimes and Mysteries is presented by Go Loud, Ireland's leading audio publisher and the home of Irish podcasts. Find new episodes on the podcast first on the Go Loud app and on your favourite podcast platform. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. I'm your host Nules, and I'm so grateful to have you with me here today. Now, before we open today's case file, I want to talk to you about a new ritual I've brought into my own morning. We're delighted to be joined by our new sponsor, Revive Active. If you're like me, your mornings are a little bit of a whirlwind, and the last thing you want is a handful of tablets to have to take. Revive Active is an Irish brand that's simplified everything. It's one single sachet with 26 vitamins, minerals and amino acids that's simply mixed into water to create a really tasty drink. It's become my daily ritual before I sit down to research cases. It's easy, it's effective, and it's made right here in Ireland. You can find your 30-day supply at reviveactive.com or your local pharmacy or health food store. Okay, today's case takes us to a disused quarry at Kildare Upper, out near the border of Wicklow and Kildare. It's an old quarry. It hasn't been worked on in a very long time. A local woman who's actually lived on that road overlooking it for nearly 40 years described it as a big hollow that used to fill up with water. That's all it ever was to anyone around there. Just basically a hole in the ground. And in June of 2026, Gardaí started digging it up again. They'd been at this same quarry only months earlier, and now they are back at it again. Now, they're not looking for stone or gravel. They're digging in the hope of finding the remains of two young women who vanished 3 years apart in the same county back in the 1990s. JoJo Dullard, who was 21, and Deirdre Jacob, who was 18 at the time. Two separate cases. Two families who have spent decades not knowing where their daughter, sister, cousin, friend is. And this one quarry that Gardaí keep coming back to. Now, as you know, neither of these girls have ever been found. There's been no remains, no grave, nothing to bury. And as I record this, the dig is still going on. And nobody knows yet whether it's going to give these two families an answer or break their hearts all over again. So that's where we're starting. An old quarry and the question of why Gardaí have come back to search it as part of both investigations. Before I get into it, here's how I'm going to do the episode. I'll take you through both cases from the start, right? Who these two women were and the day each of them vanished. Then I'll bring you right up to where things stand today. This search that's going on right now as I'm recording this and what we actually know about it versus what we don't. Because there's a gap there, obviously. And that gap matters when it comes to hearsay and what is reality. So let me bring you back. Because to understand why, you have to know who these two women were. So I'm going to start with JoJo. Her name was Josephine Dullard, but everybody obviously called her JoJo. She was born on the 25th of January 1974 and she grew up in Callan, County Kilkenny. She was the youngest of 5. Her sisters were Mary, Kathleen and Nora, and she had a brother Tom. Now JoJo had a hard start in life, really. Her dad, John Dullard, died before she was even born, and her mother Nora died of cancer in 1983. I mean, JoJo was only 9 years old then. So she was orphaned, you could say, at 9. And from that age, she went and lived with her sister Kathleen, and she stayed with Kathleen until she was about 16, when she moved up to Dublin. Now, JoJo loved music. She was into George Michael, Michael Jackson, Aha. And she had a dog she named Freeway, after the dog in a TV show Heart to Heart. Her sister Mary remembered one particular evening, JoJo getting ready to go out. Her hair up in curls, a lovely dress on. Mary gave her a ring and a bracelet that had been given to Mary herself. And Mary said she'd never forgot how JoJo looked that night. She looked just like their mother. And before JoJo headed out the door, she came over and gave Mary a big hug. For about 2 years before she disappeared, JoJo, as I said, was living in Dublin, working as a waitress in various pubs around the city centre. She'd given a beauty therapy course a go at one stage as well, but that didn't last and she left it. And this is the cruel part of it. By the autumn of 1995, JoJo had decided to move home back to Callan. She and her friend Mary Cullinan had both lined up jobs as waitresses in a pub there. JoJo was meant to start that new job on the Monday the 13th of November 1995, but she never made it because she disappeared the Thursday before. So let's walk through that night, because every minute of it has been pieced together by Gardaí, and it was an ordinary night that should have ended with her getting home safely. On the 9th of November 1995, JoJo had travelled up from Callan to Dublin by bus. She left home at around 8:30 that morning. The reason for the trip was really simple. She was collecting her final social welfare payment because she was moving home, as I said, and she was starting that new job. It was just practical stuff, really, tying up loose ends before the big move. That evening, she ended up in Bruxelles. That was a bar on Henry Street, just off Grafton Street in the city centre. And at some point, she realised she'd missed the last bus home to Callan. Now, if you know that part of the country, you know that once you miss the last bus, your options are very, very limited. So JoJo did what a lot of people did back in the 90s. She decided to make her way home by hitchhiking. Around 10 o'clock, she got a bus out of Dublin as far as Naas into County Kildare. From Naas, she got a lift to Kilcullen. Then around 11:15, she got another lift. This one as far as Moon, also in Kildare. And at 11:37 that night, JoJo went to a public phone box in Moon and rang her friend Mary Cullinan. She told Mary that her car had stopped and that she was going to take a lift. Her words were, "I have a lift. See you, Mary." That was it. That was the last anyone ever heard from her. She got into that car and she was never seen or heard from again. The next morning, the 10th of November, her sister Kathleen reported her missing. And here's where the frustration really starts. In those early days, the family felt the Gardaí weren't taking it seriously enough. There was a sense of, she'll turn up. She's a young one. She's probably gone off somewhere. Kathleen Bergen was left deeply upset and frustrated by that. Her sister was gone, vanished off the side of a road, and she felt nobody was treating it like the emergency that it actually was. In 1997, there was an awful moment. A body was found in the River Shannon, and the family were wrongly told it might be JoJo. Imagine that. Imagine bracing yourself for that. And then it turned out to be the remains of a man from Limerick. Not her at all. Just another door slammed shut. In 2008, Crime Stoppers Trust Ireland put up a reward of €10,000 for information leading to the recovery of JoJo's remains. And still nothing came of it. Now, I have to tell you about Mary Phelan, JoJo's sister, because what this woman did is extraordinary. And a lot of what exists today in this country for missing persons exists because of Mary Phelan. From November 1995 onwards, the Phelan family became full-time campaigners, planning, pressuring, fundraising, pleading with anyone who might help find JoJo. Their 90-acre farm in Kilkenny basically became the headquarters for a national campaign. It wasn't just a hobby, this was Mary's whole life. And she went right to the top. Mary Phelan contacted people like Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, George Bush, reaching out to the most powerful people in the world to try and shine a light on her missing sister. She had campaigned relentlessly for exactly that kind of coordinated review, and in September 1998, Operation Trace was established. And she kept pushing for Gardaí to follow up on specific leads, particularly land in the Kildare and Wicklow border area. Keep that in your head, because that's the same part of the country they're digging in right now. In 1998, Mary and her husband Martin Phelan set up the JoJo Dullard Memorial Trust with the help of the local TD John McGuinness. The trust campaigned for a specialist missing persons unit within the Gardaí. In 2003, Mary sat down with the Taoiseach of the day, Bertie Ahern, and argued that there should be a specialist Garda unit dedicated to missing persons cases. About 4 years after that, the Garda Cold Case Unit was set up. And the National Missing Persons Day, which we have in this country to this day, that was established in 2013 by the then Minister for Justice, Alan Shatter. But Mary Phelan had been campaigning for exactly that long before it ever happened. She didn't just fight for her own sister either. She brought families together, the families of missing people from all over Ireland and beyond. Ciara Breen's mother Bernadette up in Dundalk, Fiona Sinnott's sisters Diane and Caroline down in Wexford, Josephine Pender in Tullamore, who was Fiona Pender's mother, Annie McCarrick's father John, all the way over in New York. Mary gathered them up and gave them somewhere to stand together. On the 26th of May 2002, Mary organised Missing Persons Day, and the National Monument to Missing People was unveiled in the grounds of Kilkenny Castle. The president at the time, Mary McAleese, came to the unveiling, and afterwards the president met the families, with Mary Phelan introducing each of them to her one by one. The inscription on the monument reads, "This sculpture and area of reflection is dedicated to all missing persons." There's a memorial plaque in Moon as well, at the spot where the phone box once stood, the last place JoJo was seen. John McGuinness helped the family put it there. Before dawn one morning, McGuinness, his brother Declan, Martin Phelan and Martin's brother Gerard drove out to Moon with a load of concrete and set the stone down beside the phone box. The phone box itself was taken away years later, but the plaque is still there. Now, Mary Phelan died at her home in Cuffs Grange, County Kilkenny in April 2018, surrounded by her family after an illness, and she died still not knowing. For the last 23 years of her life, she had campaigned, she had pushed, she had begged for more to be done, and she never got the answer. 23 years of giving everything she had, and she went to her grave still wondering. After Mary died, her sister Kathleen picked up the campaign and carried it on. Now, I mentioned Operation Trace, so let me explain what that actually is. So Operation Trace was set up in September of 1998 by the Garda Commissioner at the time, Pat Byrne. It came after years of mounting public worry about women going missing in Leinster. It was led at first by the Assistant Commissioner, Tony Hickey. The name is an acronym: Trace, Review and Collate Evidence. It looked at 6 cases, 6 women. Annie McCarrick, who was 26, gone since March 1993 from Sandyford in Dublin. JoJo Dullard, 21, November 1995. Fiona Pender, 25 and pregnant, August 1996 from Tullamore. Ciara Breen, just 17, February 1997, Dundalk. Fiona Sinnott, February 1998 from Broadway in Wexford. And Deirdre Jacob, 18, July 1998 from Newbridge. Operation Trace was wound up in 2003 and its work was folded back into the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation. And here's the part people often get wrong. The team could not find a confirmed link between all 6 cases. No common perpetrator was ever established. One former member of the team, Alan Bailey, put it bluntly. He said, with Operation Trace, in many respects, they didn't even have proof that a crime had been committed. You'll hear these cases called the vanishing triangle. I want to be straight, I suppose, with you now about that term. That's a media phrase. It is not an official Garda phrase. Operation Trace was not set up to catch a serial killer, whatever you might have read. That's the dramatic framing that's got attached to it afterwards, I suppose you could say. Its actual stated job was to trace, review and collate evidence. And the idea that all 6 of these women was taken by the same person has never been established by Gardaí or by any court. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was one man, because nobody knows that. And the people who actually investigated couldn't say it either. Now, let me tell you about Deirdre. Deirdre Jacob was born on the 14th of October 1979. She was 18 when she disappeared. Home was the family house in Rosebery, just outside Newbridge in County Kildare, about 1.5 kilometres from the town centre. Deirdre herself reckoned the walk into town took her about 25 minutes. Her father is Michael Jacob. Her mother is Bernadette, known as Bernie. And she had a younger sister, Ciara, who was 4 years younger than her. Deirdre was a student teacher. She'd just finished her first year of primary teaching training over in St Mary's University in Twickenham in London, a place also known as Strawberry Hill College. She'd gone over to England in 1997 to start the course after completing her Leaving Cert and all of her schooling in Newbridge. And in the summer of 1998, she was home for the summer holidays. There's a lovely interview with her parents that they gave to the Irish Times back in February of 1999, and it gives you a real sense of who Deirdre was. They described her as a bubbly, methodical, conscientious young woman. Her mother Bernie said, "Neither of us are that organised, but Deirdre was. She would plan everything, making lists and ticking things off." Her father Michael said she loved the chat and the crack, and that she was always so well groomed. She used to keep her letters carefully tied up in bundles with ribbon or with string. She'd always wanted to work with children. Before she ever started the teacher training, she volunteered with a local children's choir. During her first year over in London, she came back to Newbridge a good few times, including to do a work placement at the local primary school. She had a close little group of about 5 friends at college, and she enjoyed her life over in London, and she was looking forward to going back there that September for her second year. Both her family and the detectives would later say the same thing about her vanishing. It was totally out of character. For the record, so that you know what she looked like, and I'm sure every single one of you that's listening knows exactly what Deirdre looks like. She was about 5'3" of slim build with greyish green eyes and dark chin-length hair. It was kind of in a bob style. And on the day she disappeared, she was wearing a navy V-neck t-shirt with white trim on the collar and on the sleeves, navy or black straight jeans and blue Nike runners. And she was also carrying a very distinctive black satchel bag with long shoulder straps, and across the front of it, in big yellow capital letters, was the word CAT. That bag has never been found. To this day, Gardaí are still looking for it. The weekend before she disappeared, Deirdre had been up in Cavan visiting friends. She came home on the Sunday evening. She was talking about the trip to her parents, said she was tired and went to bed early. Though she didn't go straight to sleep, she lay on her bed writing letters to her friends. That was Deirdre all over. Then came Tuesday, the 28th of July 1998. Deirdre left the family home at Rosebery at about 12 in the afternoon and walked the 25-minute route into Newbridge. She had 2 little things to do. She needed to get a bank draft to send to a college friend in London, money towards the deposit on her accommodation that she was going to be sharing with that friend, and she wanted to call into her grandmother who had a shop in town. Now, here's where it gets very precise, because the Gardaí had CCTV. At 2:14 in the afternoon, she's on camera walking on Main Street in Newbridge. Around 2:18, she's caught on camera inside the AIB on Main Street getting a £100 bank draft. At 2:26, she's on CCTV queuing in the post office. At 2:32, she's seen on camera talking to a friend outside the post office. And at 2:35, the last time any camera ever recorded her, she's walking past the permanent TSB bank on Main Street, the one that used to be the Irish Permanent. After that, she's gone off camera and she's walking home. And she wasn't alone on that road in the sense that people saw her. On the walk from the town back out to Rosebery, Deirdre was sighted by 8 different people. 6 of them knew her personally. A man cycled past and recognised her. 2 people who were talking on a footpath said hello to her. A man working up on a roof recognised her walking by below. 2 more people up a laneway at a spot called the Bog Cross saw her cross the road. And then, at about 3 o'clock, she was seen for the last time, near her own home, crossing the road towards the entrance to her house, yards from her own front gate. And then, nothing. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of violence, no belongings dropped on the road. She just vanished, more or less on her own doorstep in broad daylight on a summer's afternoon, after being seen by 8 different people minutes earlier. When Bernie Jacob came home and found the front door still locked and Deirdre not there, she knew straight away. Bernie said it to herself. When she reached the front door, she immediately wondered, where is Deirdre? Because Deirdre was supposed to be there. Straight away, the alarm bells began ringing in her head. A nationwide Garda appeal went out on the 31st of July, 3 days after she went missing. The Jacob case became one of the most heavily worked missing persons investigations in the country. Over 3,500 lines of inquiry, over 2,000 witness statements taken. And for 20 years officially, it stayed a missing persons case. That changed in 2018. In July of that year, on the 20th anniversary, Gardaí did a fresh public appeal and got new information in. And then on the 14th and the 15th of August 2018, the case was upgraded to a murder investigation. That came after a 12-month review carried out by Kildare Gardaí and the National Serious Crime Review Team. The lead investigators named at that point were Chief Superintendent Brian Sutton and Superintendent Martin Walker out of Kildare Garda Station. When they upgraded it, they also released that CCTV of Deirdre's last movements in Newbridge. Chief Superintendent Sutton explained the decision like this. He said they made it after a review over the previous 12 months. He said they pulled apart the missing person investigation and put it back together, basically. And as a result, there were new lines of inquiry and new information had come to light. He was clear it wasn't based on one single piece of information. It was the whole review and the fresh material all put together. And the conclusion was that Deirdre had been murdered and that it had happened on or after the 28th of July 1998. For her family, hearing that word was its own kind of blow, you could say. Even though Gardaí had briefed them beforehand, Michael Jacob said hearing it on the news that their daughter had been murdered was heart-wrenching. And he said something else. He said, "We owe it to her to find out what happened. That will be our goal all the time until we get the final answer." In July 2019, Gardaí said they were making significant progress and they made appeals around two specific lines of inquiry. One was about securing the cooperation of a close associate of a named suspect, someone who claimed to have incriminating information. The other was an appeal to an anonymous caller who'd rung Newbridge Garda Station saying they'd seen something suspicious near where Deirdre was abducted. Here's where the case takes a turn that a lot of people don't know about. A Garda investigation file on the murder of Deirdre Jacob was subjected to the Director of Public Prosecutions in 2021. And in July of 2022, the DPP came back with a direction of no prosecution, no charges. According to the reporting in the Irish Examiner, the reason was this. There was a prosecution witness, a former prisoner who knew a particular man well, but the DPP didn't consider that witness convincing enough on his own to secure a conviction. And on top of that, there's no body and there's a lack of DNA evidence. The 2022 decision was no prosecution to date. It was not a permanent closure of the case. There's no legal bar on the DPP looking at it again if new evidence comes in. So the door isn't shut. It's just that as things stood in 2022, there wasn't enough to bring it before a court. And now I have to talk about a name. The man I'm talking about is Larry Murphy. Here is what is a matter of public court record, and there's no dispute about it. Larry Murphy was convicted of the kidnapping, rape and attempted murder of a woman in the Wicklow Mountains. He was sentenced to 15 years, to which he served 10, and he was released in 2010. He's originally from Baltinglass in County Wicklow, and after he got out in 2010, he moved to England. That's the confirmed part, the conviction. That happened, and it's all on record. Now, here's the part that needs the care. In its reporting, the Irish Times has described Murphy as the prime suspect for the murder of Deirdre Jacob. And I need to say this clearly, and I'm going to keep saying it every time his name comes up. He has never been charged with the murder of Deirdre Jacob or with the murder of JoJo Dullard. Never charged. That's the newspaper's characterisation, the prime suspect line. Not an official Garda statement, and it has to sit right alongside the fact that he has not been charged with anything in relation to either woman. What is confirmed is this. In 2018, Gardaí travelled over to Britain, and along with the London Metropolitan Police, they attempted to interview Murphy. He refused to answer their questions. The Garda investigation team did recommend that Murphy be charged with the murder of Deirdre Jacob, but as I just told you, the DPP in July of 2022 directed that there would be no prosecution. There's a witness account that's been reported, and I'll say it to you exactly as it has been reported, with all the conditions attached. According to the Irish Times reporting, Gardaí received information from a witness, a former cellmate, who alleged that Murphy told him he was responsible for Deirdre's death. The account as reported, was that Murphy said he pulled in at the roadside pretending to ask Deirdre for directions, and when she leaned into the vehicle to look at the map, he dragged her in and drove off. Now, that is a non-proven allegation. It comes from a single witness. It is the very witness the DPP found was not convincing enough on his own to support a charge. Murphy has never been charged. So I'm not saying that it happened. I'm telling you that is what a witness alleged happened, and that the prosecution authorities looked at it and decided it wasn't enough. Those are two very different things. There's one more thing about Murphy I'll mention because it's confirmed and it's geographic. And geography is at the heart of this whole story. At the time both women disappeared, Larry Murphy, as I said, was living in Baltinglass, County Wicklow. And Baltinglass is less than 10 kilometres from Castleroddery Quarry, the same one they keep coming back to. The Irish Times has been explicit that the intelligence behind this search relates to the Jacob investigation, not the Dullard one. Now, let me take you back to JoJo's case for a moment, because there was a significant development in late 2024. On Monday, the 11th of November, 2024, a 55-year-old man was detained for questioning in connection with JoJo's murder inquiry. In all the years since 1995, that was the first time anyone was ever arrested in regards to JoJo's case. He was held and then released without charge the next day, Tuesday the 12th of November. 2 houses were searched in the Wicklow-Kildare border region in connection with that arrest, and lands in that area of County Wicklow were searched as well. The man denied any involvement. He was released without charge. Former Detective Inspector Pat Murray spoke about it at the time. He said the investigators would be down after that they'd have been hoping the man might say something. He called the release a blow. And you can understand why. The first arrest in nearly 30 years, and it didn't bring them any closer. By the time of that 2024 arrest, the investigation had identified nearly 800 recommendations. And that arrest came just 2 days after the 29th anniversary commemoration of JoJo at Kilkenny Castle. So even all these years on, the case is alive and it's being worked on. Even if all of us out here in the general public think there's nothing going on. So that brings us up to the digging, and there's been more than one. So I'll lay it out, because there's, I suppose, a pattern here, you could say. First, we'll go back to October 2021. Gardaí searched an isolated wooded area at Taggartstown in County Kildare, near the Wicklow border, about 15 kilometres from Newbridge. That one was for Deirdre. It came after a witness reported seeing someone acting suspiciously in the area on the evening that she disappeared. The officer named on it was Inspector John Fitzgerald of Kildare Garda Station, and Fitzgerald was careful when he spoke about it. He said it was important to manage expectations and not get ahead of ourselves. There'd been unusual activity seen there, and they were searching to see if any evidence was there. In the end, nothing was found. Then we jump forward to February of 2026. On the 16th of February, Gardaí announced a new excavation at a disused quarry in Wicklow near the Kildare border, roughly a mile outside Stratford-on-Slaney. And this was a big shift. This was the first time the 2 investigations, JoJo's and Deirdre's, were formally linked at a single search site. The same dig, both women. It was led by the Serious Crime Review Team, the National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and the Kildare and Carlow Garda Division, and the Defence Forces helped out with a technical ground survey. That February search wrapped up around the 25th of February 2026. The Garda statement said a further assessment of the site remained ongoing, but, and this is important, the site was not fully ruled out, so they weren't done with the place. And that takes us up to, right now, the latest dig. On the 15th of June 2026, Gardaí began searching the same Castleroddery Upper Quarry again. In the week beforehand, the Defence Forces carried out a technical ground survey of the area under what's called Aid to Civil Power Arrangements. The search involves full excavation and forensic examination. The Garda statement put it very plainly. They said the area of land would now be searched and subject to excavation and forensic examinations over the coming days. It's been led by the Serious Crime Review Team within the Garda National Bureau of Criminal Investigation, with the Garda National Technical Bureau, the Kildare and Carlow Division and the Wicklow Garda Division all involved. Heavy machinery was brought in, an excavator was seen at the site lifting out soil. Gardaí also got a drone no-fly zone put over the area and asked the media to be sensitive about it. Now, the Gardaí, as I said, haven't stumbled onto this by accident. They've searched the same quarry only months before, back in February. And now they've been back at it again in June. This is a site they keep returning to. And the reason that matters is something the Irish Times pointed to. Coming back to the very same area for a second excavation within months is highly unusual in cold case murder investigations. You don't do that lightly. The fact that they did it suggests how seriously Gardaí are treating whatever intelligence is driving them in this direction. To give you the geography, because it's striking really, the search site is about 17 kilometres from Moon, where JoJo was last seen. It's about 30 kilometres north of Rosebery in Newbridge, where Deirdre was last seen. And as the reporting has noted, Larry Murphy's old home in Baltinglass is nearby too, less than 10 kilometres away. So why this quarry? What put it on the map for Gardaí in the first place? Most of what's known here comes from newspaper reporting, not from official Garda statements, and I want to make that distinction. The official Garda press release from the 15th of June does not name Larry Murphy. It does not name the site. It does not spell out the intelligence behind the dig. What it does do is name both women, JoJo Dullard and Deirdre Jacob, and confirm that the families of both have been kept fully updated. That's the only officially confirmed basis for linking both cases to this search. The Gardaí themselves naming both women in the context of this one operation. Everything beyond that comes from the press. So here's what's been reported, attributed properly. The Irish Times has reported that the Garda search team is acting on intelligence that Larry Murphy was involved in suspicious activity at the Castle Ruddery site around the time Deirdre Jacob vanished in July 1998. And the Irish Times has reported, and I'm going to give you this with every single one of its conditions intact, because they were put there deliberately.
And just another little caveat, I want to say it here again because it has to follow his name every time. Larry Murphy has never been charged with either murder.
That Gardaí have been told that Murphy may have allegedly buried something at the site, possibly concealed inside a vehicle. Now, that's kind of unreal. They have been told, may have, allegedly, possibly. 4 conditions stacked on top of each other. So I'm not saying that the Gardaí believe Murphy buried a body there, because that is not what was reported, and it would be inaccurate to say it that way. While the search covers both murder investigations, the site and the intelligence behind it are more closely linked to the Deirdre Jacob case, as I said before, more closely linked to Deirdre than to JoJo. So that raises the obvious question. And I say question because I can't pretend I have the answer. If the intelligence is mainly about Deirdre Jacob, why is the JoJo Dullard investigation tied into this same dig at all? And the honest answer is that obviously that the Gardaí have not publicly explained that. They've named both of the girls, they're digging on behalf of both of the families, but they've never said why JoJo's case is tied to a site whose intelligence points more towards Deirdre. And we'll have to wait and see what the Gardaí come out and say. The best anyone outside of the investigation has offered as an analysis, not a confirmation, is the crime editor of the Irish Sun, Stephen Breen. He told RTE that he believes Gardaí linked the two investigations because of how close the two disappearances were, both geographically and in time. Both in Kildare, both in the 1990s, 3 years apart. And he felt it made sense to pool the resources together across the Wicklow, Carlow and Kildare divisions. But as I said, that's just from a journalist's perspective. That's not the Gardaí. Now, let me pull together what's actually solid here. Because between the 2 cases and 3 searches, it can get a little bit tangled up, I suppose. Both women disappeared in County Kildare in the 1990s. JoJo Dullard in November 1995, Deirdre Jacob in July of 1998. 3 years between them. Both cases are now murder investigations. Deirdre since 2018, JoJo since 2020. Neither of the girls have ever been found, nor remains in either case, ever. What is not established is that the same person killed both of them. No reputable source claims it. No forensic or evidential link between the two murders has ever been confirmed publicly. They're being searched for at the same site, by the same teams, but that is not the same thing as proof they died at the same hand. And there's a long list of things that simply are not known. Who gave JoJo that final lift out of Moon? Where her remains are? What that February 2026 analysis of the quarry actually produced, because it's never been made public. What the Defence Force's ground survey identified that sent the diggers in this June. The actual source and nature of the intelligence behind it all. Why exactly JoJo's case is linked to this site. And as I record this, whether this current search has found anything at all. If by the time this podcast does go out and there's new information, I will add it on at the end. Now, for Deirdre, the open questions are just as raw. What happened to her in those minutes between the last sighting of her in town and the last sighting of her at her own gate? Where is her black cat bag? Because, as I said, it's never been found. Whether any new information has come up since the 2022 DPP direction that could change things, it's all open, it's all unanswered. And while all of this goes on, while the machinery tears into that quarry on the Wicklow-Kildare border, there are still two families waiting. So I want to end with them, because at the centre of all of this are the people who have never been able to put these girls to rest. That's always where my focus goes. JoJo's sister Kathleen Bergen has carried the campaign since Mary died. And what she keeps coming back to is not revenge. She has said it very, very clearly. This is not about revenge. At this stage, all we want is to bring JoJo back and lay her to rest alongside her mum and dad. She said JoJo deserves that now, after all of this time. And she's spoken about what it does to a family to be denied even just that small little bit of closure. During COVID, she said, people couldn't hug their loved ones and only got to do it again when restrictions were lifted. But they can never hug JoJo again. The most they're asking for is a resting place. Somewhere to lay flowers, somewhere to take care of. That's all they want. She's appealed directly to anyone holding anything back. She said she knows people are probably afraid to come forward. But the family are hoping and praying that those people realise they would just give them a hug if they came forward and helped. And around this latest search, Kathleen said that the family hope to lay JoJo to rest beside their parents soon. And she has asked again for anyone with any information to come forward. And there's an urgency in that now that wasn't always there, because the people who knew JoJo are getting older. And some of them have died without ever finding out. As recently as June, Kathleen mentioned that a close friend of JoJo's, a girl named Esther, had passed away herself, still not knowing what happened. Kathleen's point was a simple one. They don't want any more of JoJo's loved ones going to their graves without answers. Every year that passes, that's another person who knew her who never gets to find out. A close friend of the Dullard family, a Father Willie Purcell, spoke publicly around the time of the current search about what it means to them. He described the family taking real hope from even the smallest sign that JoJo might be found, and a renewed sense that this search could finally bring them some closure. And then there's the Jacobs, Michael and Bernie. They're still living in that same house, still going out that same gate Deirdre walked towards 28 years ago. Michael Jacobs said something in 2025 that I just can't get out of my head. He said, every time you drive in this gateway, you ask yourself the same question. What happened here? And he said the case has never moved on from 2 or 3 minutes past 3 o'clock on that July day in 1998. That's where it froze for them, that exact moment. Everything since then has just been waiting and hoping. Bernie put it the simplest way of all. She said their children were the centre of their lives, and now they don't know where one of them is. They don't know what happened to her. And that's what all of this is for in the end. It's not about a headline or a name in a paper. It's so that Michael and Bernie Jacob might find out where their daughter is, and so that Kathleen Bergen might finally lay her little sister down beside her mum and dad. The thing Mary spent 23 years fighting for and never got to see. As of the time I'm recording, the search at Kilruddery is still ongoing. There's been no outcome announced, no Garda update since the 15th of June. So we wait, the same as those families wait. And maybe this time the ground gives something back, and maybe it doesn't. But somebody, somewhere, knows what happened to JoJo Dullard and Deirdre Jacob, and it is never too late to do the right thing. That's why I keep coming back to these cases. So as I've always said, if you have any information, no matter how small you think it is, you can contact Naas Garda Station on 045 884 300 or Kildare Garda Station on 045 527 730 or the Garda Confidential Line on 1800 666 111. Even after all these years, one phone call could be the one that brings these two girls home to their families. As I said, if there's any updates before I get this episode out to you, I'll add them here at the end. But for now, let's just keep the Dullard family and the Jacob family in our thoughts and in our prayers. And please God, something will come out of this search. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you in the next episode. That's it for another episode of Ireland Crimes and Mysteries. Thank you for joining me, and thanks again to our new sponsor, Revive Active. We've been talking about the importance of steady, sustainable energy, and that's exactly what this daily drink provides. Whether you're out for a walk, on the way to the gym, coming home from work, or catching up on your favourite podcasts, Revive Active supports your well-being at every stage of life. It's Ireland's #1 vitamin and dietary supplement brand for a reason. You can find the full range, including their specific capsules for sleep and calm, at reviveactive.com or your local health food store or pharmacy. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and I'll talk to you all again next week.
GoLaid presents Ireland Crimes and Mysteries, brought to you by Revive Active, an Irish brand that has pioneered the super supplement in just one daily drink. Discover Ireland's favourite at reviveactive.com.